And welcome to our third unit of pharmacology. I'm Eduardo and I'm going to help explain Pharmacy Hunt, make your own first aid kit. So in this lesson, students are going to be making their first aid kit by applying what they already know by pharmacology and pharmaceutical products. And they're going to really learn the difference between over-the-counter medication and products versus prescribed products and medication. So again, reminding the students that over the counter, it can literally be bought at any pharmacy or any store such as CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid. A lot of students are familiar with these pharmaceutical companies. So just telling the students that over the counter can be literally bought from any of these stores versus prescription. You can only get it from a doctor. A doctor usually writes you a note, you go to the pharmacy, and they give you a medicine specifically made for you. You can't buy that anywhere else because, again, it's made for you and it's really, really secured by the pharmacist and your doctor. Also, explaining to the students and asking them, what do pharmacies sell? A lot of students will say, well, medicine. And then students are going to say, well, they sometimes sell chips and water and snacks. Some of them may say band-aids and vitamins and other kinds of things. And that's really cool that the students understand that pharmacies, they can sell a lot of other stuff. What we're going to be working on with our activity today, we're going to be working with a lot of supplies that are found at every single pharmacy and drugstore. So, all of these supplies listed here, they're pretty standard and they're found in almost any practical first aid kit. A first aid kit is usually used during emergencies or whenever something crazy happens, like an earthquake or an accident or an injury. One example that I use for my students, I included this slide. I made PowerPoints for my students just to keep myself organized. What I did, I showed them this slide. Sorry. So in California, a lot of us really know that we experience earthquakes. I use these GIFs in my PowerPoint so that the students can understand and look what an earthquake looks and how scary they can be and like the dangers of an earthquake. You can see all these things like moving around, falling. And this lets students understand that they need to be careful during earthquakes. And earthquakes are certain instances where they might need to use a first aid kit. For instance, a window might break, glass can break, a ceiling can fall on you. You never know. So that's why first aid kits come in really handy, especially here in California. The students can maybe describe a time when they had to use a first aid kit. So now that the students understand why first aid kits are used during emergencies, we're going to move on to the activity. So in our activity, they're going to have kind of like a little scavenger hunt. Students are going to be assigned into groups at their table, and we're going to give them a list. This list, the students are going to be able to cross off everything that they have found, and it'll also tell them what they're missing. So they're going to go to each table, and each table is going to have a certain amount of supplies. So let's say at one table they find a thermometer. They're going to cross off the thermometer and put that in their little baggies. They may also find a gauze. They might cross that off their list. Latex gloves, they can cross that off their list. And they're going to go on to the next station or next table, and their students are going to alternate tables. So I had 4 groups, and at each table I had a certain amount of supplies. This keeps it a little organized, and the students switch stations. At the very end of their last switch and rotation, the students should have all of these supplies in their baggies. Maybe in some instance you might not have all of them, and that's okay. You can just cross that off your list and tell the students that they're not going to have that. Here are a couple of pictures that I took of my students at one of their stations, and you can see this student right here is crossing off something off of her list. There's also, I took this picture somewhere towards the end, and these are the supplies that were left. Additionally, this is one of my students, and this is his first aid kit. In the back, you can see there are more supplies that are here. And again, the students have stations. They go pick up their supplies and move on to their next station after a certain amount of time. This keeps it organized and it keeps the flow pretty smooth. And that is the conclusion for our first aid kit lesson.